The nights always stretched longer than the days. Amara often sat in the corner of an unfinished building, her back against a cracked wall, with little Adiz lying weakly in her arms. The roof was half gone, and when the wind blew, it carried dust and cold air inside. The mosquitoes buzzed around them, biting her arms and face, but she hardly noticed. All she cared about was the small child whose soft cries pierced the silence. Adiz whimpered again, her lips dry, her stomach empty. Amara rubbed her tiny back, rocking her slowly. She whispered into the darkness, "Don't cry, my Adiz. Sleep, my child. Tomorrow will be better." But in her heart, Amara wasn't sure if tomorrow would really change. Her own stomach was empty, her throat dry, but she didn't mind. What hurt most was watching her baby cry from hunger, powerless to provide. Sometimes she closed her eyes and imagined another life. A little room with a bed, a plate of warm food, and Adiz laughing instead of crying. The thought gave her strength, but when she opened her eyes, the broken walls reminded her of reality. She sighed deeply and tightened the cloth around Adiz. No matter how dark the night was, she promised herself one thing. She would never give up on her child. When morning came, Lagos came alive with its noise. Traders shouted prices as they set up their stalls. Buses honked at every corner. Hawkers darted between cars, waving goods in the air. Life moved quickly, but Amara walked slowly, Adiz tied firmly to her back with a faded wrapper. Her feet were sore from walking, but she kept moving. She stopped near food stalls, her voice soft but desperate. "Please, just small food for my baby. She hasn't eaten." Most people ignored her. Some turned their faces away, pretending not to hear. A few hissed at her. One woman snapped, "Go and work, don't beg here." Amara lowered her eyes and said nothing. She only adjusted the wrapper and rocked Adiz gently. But once in a while, someone kind would notice. A bread seller might hand her a small loaf. Another person might pour a little pap into a plastic cup. On those days, Amara's eyes filled with tears. She always fed Adiz first, watching her baby's lips move slowly around the food. Only after that did she take a small bite for herself. Still, most mornings ended the same. Her stomach remained empty, her feet tired, her heart heavy. Yet she walked on, whispering to herself, "One day, things will change. One day, Adiz will smile again." That afternoon, when the sun grew hot and the noise of the market filled the air, Amara found a quiet spot under a small tree. She laid Adiz carefully on her lap and fanned her gently with a piece of cardboard. The child was restless, her little hands moving weakly. As Amara rocked her, her mind wandered to the past, back to the days when she wasn't alone. She thought of Chike. He wasn't a wealthy man, but his smile had been enough to light her heart. He drove a taxi, always returning with stories of passengers, and he spoke of dreams bigger than his earnings. He had loved her, or so she believed. When she told him she was pregnant, she expected fear. Instead, he promised marriage. "We will be a family," he had said, holding her hand tightly. "But first, I must go home and tell my people. It's tradition." He left with that promise. 1 week, he said, just 1 week. But the weeks stretched into months and months into silence. His number stopped connecting. Friends avoided her questions. She begged for answers, but no one gave her any. That was when the truth sank in. He wasn't coming back. Amara remembered crying until her eyes swelled. She remembered waiting at the roadside, hoping to see his taxi again. But now, as she looked at Adiz's tired face, she whispered through her tears, "Your father may have left us, but I will never leave you, my child. Never." Survival became Amara's only focus. She knocked on doors, searching for work. Her voice was always the same, polite, desperate, hopeful. "Please, I can clean. I can wash. I can cook. Any work at all." But once people saw the baby tied to her back, the answer was always no. "You cannot work and carry a child. You should be with your husband. No space here. Try somewhere else." The rejection followed her everywhere. Even on the streets, she wasn't spared. Passers-by whispered loudly, their words sharp as knives. "Why have a child if you can't care for one? She's only using the baby to beg." Each word pierced her heart, but she never fought back. She only held the D's closer and walked away in silence. There were days when she got nothing to eat, days when her strength almost failed her. Yet every night, she wrapped her baby tightly and whispered, "One day, my D's, one day, you will not live like this. I promise." The night was quiet, but inside the unfinished building where Amara stayed, the silence was heavy. The air was damp, and the floor was hard. Amara sat against the wall, her wrapper wrapped tightly around her shoulders, a D's lying in her arms. The little girl's breathing was slow, her tiny chest rising and falling with each soft sigh. Amara stroked her daughter's cheek gently. The child was so small, so fragile, yet she carried all of Amara's hope in her little body. Looking at Adiz always gave Amara the strength to face another day, no matter how hard. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered into the darkness, "My Adiz, one day you will not suffer like this. You will eat well, you will sleep in a bed, and you will go to school like every other child. I don't know how it will happen, but I promise you, my daughter, I will never stop fighting for you." Her voice broke, but she held Adiz closer, as if her words could shield the baby from the cold night. She had no family, no home, no one to call her own, but she had a dream for her child. And that dream was stronger than hunger, stronger than fear, stronger than despair. Every morning, she rose again. She tied Adiz to her back, walked into the noise of Lagos, and begged for mercy. People stared, some with pity, some with judgment. But Amara kept going. Each step was for Adiz. And so, day after day, she endured. She didn't know when or how, but deep in her heart, she believed help would come. She believed her life would not end in the streets. That unshakable hope, whispered every night as a mother's promise, carried her forward, until the day her path crossed with Kunal, the man who would change her life forever. The morning sun rose slowly over Lagos. The streets were already alive, traders arranging their wares, buses honking, hawkers weaving through traffic. To many, it was just another busy day. But for Amara, it was another test of survival. She tied Adiz firmly to her back with her faded wrapper and walked toward the roadside. Her steps were heavy, but her determination pushed her forward. She chose a spot near a row of small shops, where people often passed on their way to work. Her voice was low but steady as she begged, "Please, just small food for my baby. She has not eaten." Some glanced at her with pity, but moved on. Others frowned, muttering under their breath. Amara lowered her head, her cheeks burning with shame, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Adiz stirred softly on her back, and that small movement reminded her why she was standing there. She whispered to herself, "Hold on, my child. Help will come." What Amara did not know was that help was closer than she imagined. A sleek black SUV rolled slowly along the road, caught in the usual Lagos traffic. Inside sat Kunal, a wealthy businessman dressed neatly in a dark suit. He leaned back in his seat, scrolling through notes on his phone. He had an important meeting ahead, one that could bring foreign investors to his company. But then his eyes shifted. Through the tinted glass, he noticed a young woman by the roadside. She wasn't loud. She wasn't forcing herself on anyone. She simply stood there, holding a baby close, her head bowed, her voice soft but filled with pain. Kunal's gaze lingered. Something about the way she clutched the child struck him deeply. She wasn't pretending. This wasn't a scam. This was real suffering. "Stop the car," Kunal said suddenly. The driver glanced back, surprised. "Sir, I said stop." The SUV eased to a halt. Without hesitation, Kunal opened the door and stepped out. The heat of the morning hit him, but he didn't care. He walked straight toward the woman. Amara looked up, startled. She saw a tall man in a fine suit standing before her. She held Adiz tighter, unsure of what he wanted. Kunal's voice was gentle. "Good morning." Amara nodded slightly, too shy to speak. He glanced at the baby. "What is her name?" "Adiz," Amara whispered. Kunal stepped closer, his eyes softening as he saw the child's tired face. "Has she eaten?" Amara shook her head. "No, sir. Not since yesterday." Kunal's jaw tightened. He looked at her clothes, her worn slippers, the exhaustion in her eyes. Then he said firmly, "Come with me." Amara hesitated, fear and confusion battling inside her. She had never spoken to a rich man before, but when she looked into his eyes, she saw no pride, no judgment, only kindness. Slowly, she nodded and followed him toward the waiting car. Amara stepped carefully into the back seat of the SUV, holding Adiz tightly. She sat at the very edge, afraid to touch anything. The seats were smooth leather, cleaner than anything she had ever sat on. She kept her eyes low, her hands trembling as she rocked her baby gently. The driver glanced at her through the mirror, his expression unreadable, but Amara avoided his eyes. She focused on Adiz, who whimpered softly in her arms. Beside her, Kunal sat quietly, deep in thought. He handed her a small towel from the seat. "Here," he said softly. "Use this to dry the baby." Amara took it quickly. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her hands still shaking. She wrapped Adiz in the towel, patting her gently. "What's your name?" Kunal asked. "Amara," she replied, almost too softly to hear. "And where is your home?" he continued. She lowered her head. Her voice broke as she answered. "We sleep on the streets, sir." Kunal's chest tightened. He nodded slowly, then spoke firmly. "All right, I'll take you somewhere safe." Amara looked up at him, eyes wide with disbelief. "Really, sir?" "Yes," he said with a gentle nod. "You and your baby need food and rest first." Tears filled Amara's eyes, but she quickly wiped them with her wrapper. She whispered, "God bless you, sir." Kunal looked ahead, saying nothing more, but in his heart he knew this woman and her child could not be left in the streets. Kunal instructed the driver to stop at a small restaurant nearby. He didn't care who was watching. He helped Amara out of the car, and together they walked inside. Heads turned as people stared at the wealthy man and the tired young woman with a baby in her arms. Kunal ignored them. He ordered quickly, hot rice, fried plantain, chicken, and a cup of warm milk for the baby. Amara sat at the edge of the chair, Adiz resting on her lap. When the food arrived, she hesitated. She looked at Kunal nervously. "Can I eat here, sir?" she asked softly. Kunal nodded. "Yes, eat." She bowed her head in gratitude. Carefully, she fed Adiz the warm milk first, watching the baby drink slowly. Relief washed over her as she saw her child finally satisfied. Only then did Amara take a spoon of rice for herself. At first, she ate slowly, almost afraid the food might disappear. Then hunger took over, and she ate with trembling hands. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she chewed, her body shaking from both weakness and relief. Kunal sat across the table, watching in silence. He said nothing, but every tear she shed touched him deeply. He had seen poverty before, but something about this woman's quiet strength moved him in a way he couldn't explain. When she finished, Amara wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and whispered, "Thank you, sir." "God bless you." Kunal leaned forward slightly. His voice was calm but serious. "Tell me, Amara, how did you end up like this?" Amara lowered her gaze, her fingers gently brushing Adiz's soft hair as she gathered the courage to speak. The restaurant was quiet now, the clatter of spoons and voices fading in the background. Kunal's eyes stayed fixed on her, waiting patiently. "Sir," Amara began, her voice trembling, "I don't have anyone in this world. My parents died when I was a little girl. I grew up in an orphanage in Abadan. Life there was hard. Every day felt like a fight to survive." She paused, swallowing her tears. "When I became older, I started working in people's houses. I washed, I cooked, I cleaned, anything I could do to eat. Then one day I met Chike. He was a taxi driver. He was kind to me, kind in a way I had never known before." Amara's eyes filled with tears as the memories poured out. "We fell in love. After 1 year, he promised to marry me. When I found out I was pregnant, I was scared, but he was happy. He told me he wanted to do the right thing, but he had to travel home first. He said it was tradition to inform his family." Her lips quivered. "That was the last time I saw him. He promised to return in 1 week. 1 week became months. His phone stopped going through. I begged his friends for answers, but none of them helped me. Some avoided me. Others lied. I was alone." Her voice broke completely now. "I lost the little room I was staying in. No job would take me with a pregnancy. I started sleeping outside, begging strangers for food. And now, she kissed Adi's forehead. My baby is all I have. Kunnal's heart grew heavy. He saw the pain in her eyes, but he also saw strength, the kind that refuses to die, no matter how much life takes away. He leaned back in his chair, silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. This is not where your story will end, he thought quietly. Kunnal reached into his pocket and placed a bundle of money on the table. Amara's eyes widened. Her hand shook. Sir, this is too much, she whispered. I can't take it. Take it, Kunnal said firmly, his tone gentle but commanding. You need it. Your baby needs it. Amara held the money close to her chest, her tears falling freely. May God bless you, sir. Kunnal glanced at his wristwatch. His important meeting had already started without him. Foreign investors were likely waiting at his office. But in that moment, the thought of business felt small compared to the woman sitting in front of him and the child sleeping in her arms. He pulled out a card from his wallet and slid it across the table. This is my number, he said. In 3 hours, when my meeting is done, call me. I will come to you and take you to a safe place. Amara picked up the card as though it was gold. She wanted to thank him again, but her voice failed her. All she managed was a faint, thank you, sir. Kunnal rose from his chair, gave her one last look, and walked out. Amara sat still, Adi's in one arm and the business card in the other. For the first time in a very long time, she felt hope. She pressed the card against her chest and whispered, maybe our life can change. She did not know that the small card she held so tightly would soon slip away, and with it, her only way of reaching him. After Kunnal left the restaurant, Amara sat there for a while, holding Adi's in one arm and the business card in the other. She looked at it again and again, his name, his number, and smiled through her tears. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel like a dream. When Adi's stirred, Amara adjusted her tiny blanket. She slipped the card carefully into the small pocket of her baby's clothes. There, she whispered. Safe. She touched the pocket again, just to be sure. Finally, she stood up, ready to return to her usual spot near the roadside. She stepped out of the restaurant, walking slowly. The midday sun was bright now, drying the ground from the night's dampness. She had no idea that as she adjusted Adi's wrapper at the door, the card slipped out quietly and landed on the ground. No one noticed. By the time Amara reached her corner, she sat down on a wooden bench, certain that when the time came, she would pay someone to help her make the call. She smiled faintly and kissed Adi's forehead. Soon, my baby, soon, things will change. But she didn't know that the card, her only bridge to safety, was gone. Meanwhile, Kunnal's meeting had ended successfully. The foreign investors had shaken his hand, excited about the future of his company. Everyone expected him to be pleased, but his mind wasn't on business. He checked his phone repeatedly. No missed calls, no messages. Hours passed, and still nothing. He leaned back in his office chair, frowning. Why hasn't she called me? He muttered under his breath. His assistant looked at him curiously, but Kunnal waved it off. He tried to reason with himself. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she changed her mind. Maybe she never intended to call at all. But then he remembered her tears, the way she fed her baby first before touching the food, the way her hands shook as she spoke of her struggles. That didn't look like a woman playing games. He sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. What if something happened? What if she tried and couldn't? Still, no call came. Far away, Amara sat at her usual corner, rocking Adi's gently. As the hours ticked by, she finally opened the little pocket of her baby's clothes to check the card. Her hands froze. Her heart raced. It wasn't there. She searched the baby's clothes again, checked her own wrapper, and even shook the cloth on the ground. Nothing. Panic gripped her chest. No, this can't be. Her voice cracked as tears filled her eyes. God finally sent someone to help us, and I lost him. She hugged Adi's tightly, her tears falling on the baby's small face. I'm so sorry, my child. I lost our only chance. Her heart was heavy, not knowing that at that very moment, Kunnal sat in his office, staring at his phone, waiting for a call that would never come. Kunnal sat in his office long after the investors had left. The papers on his desk lay untouched. His phone sat beside him, silent. Not a single call. The image of Amara and her baby would not leave his mind. He remembered her trembling hands, her quiet voice, the way she kissed her child's forehead after every word. Something about her had struck him deeply, something he couldn't shake off. Finally, he stood up and said to his driver, "Take me back to that restaurant, the one I went to this morning." The driver nodded, and soon the black SUV was weaving through the traffic. Cunnell's eyes scanned the streets as they drove, as if he expected to see Amara standing somewhere. His chest tightened with every passing second. When they reached the restaurant, Cunnell stepped out quickly. His eyes swept the roadside, the shops, the little corners. Nothing. No sign of Amara or her baby. He walked to the entrance, his shoes crunching softly on the damp ground. That was when he saw it, lying near the door, soaked from the earlier drizzle. His business card. He bent down slowly and picked it up. The edges were wet, the ink smudged but still readable. Cunnell's heart sank. He whispered to himself, did she throw it away, or did it fall without her knowing? He clenched the card in his hand, feeling a heavy mix of doubt and worry. He entered the restaurant and sat at the same table where she had eaten. The waitress approached with a polite smile. "Good afternoon, sir. What will you have?" "Just rice and chicken," he said softly, not even looking up. As he waited for the food, Cunnell stared at the wet card lying on the table. In his mind, two voices battled. One said she never meant to call, the other said she lost it. He didn't know which to believe. But one thing was clear, his heart wasn't at peace. At the same time, Amara sat under a small shade by the roadside. Her hands kept moving, checking Adi's tiny clothes again and again. Nothing. No card. Her tears flowed freely. "No, this is not happening. God, please, not like this." She pressed her child to her chest, rocking back and forth. "He said he would help us. He said he would come back. And now I can't even call him." But then a thought sparked in her mind. Maybe it fell inside the restaurant. Maybe someone picked it up. Maybe it's still there. Wiping her tears quickly, she tied Adi's firmly to her back and stood up. Her legs were weak, but determination pushed her forward. She boarded a crowded bus heading toward the street, she remembered. The journey felt longer than usual, every stop making her heart pound faster. Finally, she reached the restaurant. Her eyes darted everywhere as she rushed inside. She went straight to the table where she had sat with Cunnell earlier that morning. It was clean, the floor empty. The card was gone. Her knees felt weak, but she forced herself to ask a waitress, "Please, did anyone find a small card here? Please." It had a number on it. The waitress shook her head gently. "No, madam. We cleaned everything. Nothing like that." Amara's chest caved in. Her tears returned, unstoppable. She stepped outside slowly, holding Adi's close. The baby started crying too, her tiny voice blending with her mother's sobs. Neither of them knew that just moments earlier, Cunnell had sat at that same table, staring at the very card Amara was searching for, before leaving only seconds before she arrived. That night, Amara returned to the unfinished building where she usually stayed. She laid Adi's gently on the cold floor, using an old wrapper as a bed. The child's small hands rested on her mother's arm as she drifted into restless sleep. Amara sat awake, staring at the ceiling with tears in her eyes. She thought of Cunnell's kind face, his gentle voice, the food he had given them, and the hope he had promised. She thought of the card she had lost, the one link that could have changed everything. "God," she whispered into the darkness, "don't let this be the end. Don't let this chance pass me by." Before she closed her eyes, she made a firm decision. "Tomorrow, I will go back to that same spot by the roadside. Maybe, just maybe, he will pass there again." The night was long, filled with the sting of mosquitoes and the chill of the wind, but her resolve didn't break. By early morning, Amara was already up. She cleaned Adi's with a small bowl of water, tied her securely to her back, and walked toward the place where Cunnell had first seen her. She stood there quietly, not begging this time, not even speaking. Her eyes scanned every black SUV that passed, her heart leaping with each one. But none stopped. The sun grew hot, sweat ran down her face, yet she refused to leave. She whispered to her baby, "We'll wait here. Help will come. It has to." While Amara waited on the busy roadside, life was joyful in another part of Lagos. At Cunnell's mansion, Music played softly and laughter filled the air. Today was a special day. His younger brother, Tund, was returning home after 17 years abroad. Kunal had been looking forward to this reunion. He had told the chef to prepare fried rice, jollof, grilled chicken, goat meat, and pounded yam, Tund's favorite. He had also called his closest friends, asking them to come celebrate. At the airport, Kunal's driver stood with a sign that read Tund. Soon, a tall man with a wide smile appeared, pushing a trolley full of suitcases. "You must be Kunal's driver," Tund said warmly. "Yes, sir." "Welcome home," the driver replied, loading the bags into the car. As they drove through the city, Tund looked out the window, marveling at the changes. "Lagos has grown so much," he said with a laugh. But the driver's eyes suddenly shifted. There, by the roadside, stood Amara with a D's tied to her back, the same spot where Kunal had met her days ago. She looked tired, her face worn, but she was still standing, waiting quietly. The driver's grip on the steering wheel tightened. His heart pounded. Should he stop? Should he tell Tund? Should he call Kunal? He hesitated, torn between duty and compassion. Finally, he kept driving, but his mind was restless. When they reached the mansion, Kunal came running out with a wide smile. "Tund," he shouted, hugging his brother tightly. The air was filled with laughter and joy as friends joined the celebration. But the driver stood quietly at the side, his face troubled. He knew what he had seen. He knew the woman was still waiting. And deep down, he knew he couldn't keep it to himself for long. The mansion was full of joy. Music floated from the speakers. Laughter echoed through the wide hallways, and the aroma of freshly cooked food filled the air. Kunal stood with his brother Tund, his face bright with happiness. Guests clapped him on the back, congratulating him on the reunion. But in the middle of the cheer, the driver stood silently near the door. His eyes shifted often to Kunal. He wanted to speak, but he didn't want to spoil the celebration. Still, the image of Amara standing at the roadside with her baby would not leave his mind. When Kunal stepped toward the kitchen to check on the food, the driver followed quickly. "Sir," he said in a low, careful voice. Kunal turned, surprised by his tone. "What is it?" The driver hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I saw her today." Kunal frowned. "Who?" "The woman from the other day. The one with the baby. She was standing at the same place where you first met her." Kunal froze, his expression unreadable. Slowly, he looked down as if recalling every detail. "The same woman? Are you sure?" "Yes, sir. I know it was her. She was still there, waiting." Kunal's chest tightened. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he whispered almost to himself, "The woman who lost my card, was she really waiting for me?" His mind raced with doubt and hope. He remembered the way she held her baby in the restaurant, her tears as she ate, her soft voice when she told her story. Finally, Kunal looked at the driver, his decision firm. "Go back to that spot. If she's still there, bring her here. Ask her why she didn't call me. If her reason makes sense, and if her face shows she truly needs help, don't leave her there. Bring her to me." The driver nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." He turned and hurried out, his heart racing with urgency. The sun was hot that afternoon. Amara stood by the roadside with a D's tied to her back. Her legs ached, sweat dripped down her face, and her lips were dry. She had been there for hours, scanning every car that passed. Her heart leapt at every black SUV, only to sink again when it drove on without stopping. She whispered to her baby, "Hold on, Adiz. Maybe today will be the day. Maybe he will pass here again." Just as her strength was about to fail, she heard the sound of a car pulling up. A red SUV slowed beside her, and the tinted window rolled down. Her eyes widened as she recognized the driver. He stepped out quickly, his voice gentle but firm. "Madam," he called, "please wait." Amara's heart raced. She clutched Adiz tighter, her tears already forming. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice shaking. "I lost the card he gave me. I searched everywhere, even went back to the restaurant. It was gone. I tried, sir. I really tried." The driver studied her face. He saw the tired lines, the sweat on her forehead, the way she held her baby like treasure. There was no pretense, no lies. This was a woman who had truly suffered. "Please follow me," he said softly. Amara nodded quickly, relief flooding her chest. She stepped into the red SUV, her hands trembling as she adjusted Adiz on her lap. As the car pulled away, she whispered under her breath, "Thank you, God. Thank you." The drive felt like a dream. She pressed her forehead gently against the window, watching the streets rush by. Every bump on the road, every sound of the city faded compared to the thought racing through her mind. She was finally going to see him again. Moments later, the SUV turned into Connell's mansion. The gates opened wide, revealing a compound filled with flowers, polished cars, and laughter from inside the house. Amara's eyes widened, her mouth falling open slightly. It looked like another world, a world she had never imagined stepping into. Her heart pounded as the SUV stopped. The driver stepped out and opened the door for her. Amara climbed down slowly, holding Adiz close. Her legs trembled as she stared at the grand house before her. For the first time in a long time, she felt the stirrings of hope, stronger than ever before. The sound of laughter filled Connell's sitting room. Friends and relatives were gathered around, sharing drinks and stories. Connell sat with his brother Tund, his heart still glowing with joy from their reunion. But when the driver walked in and motioned toward the door, Connell looked up. His eyes landed on Amara. She stepped in slowly, holding Adiz close to her chest. Her wrapper was faded, her face damp with sweat, but her eyes glistened with tears. For a moment, silence filled the room. The laughter died down as everyone turned to stare. Amara's legs trembled. Overcome by emotion, she dropped to her knees. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Thank you for not forgetting us." Connell moved quickly, kneeling beside her. He held her gently by the arms and said firmly, "No, please don't kneel. You don't have to do that." He lifted her to her feet, his eyes soft with compassion. Whispers spread among the guests, their faces filled with questions. But Connell said nothing to them. He only looked at Amara and the child in her arms. "Come with me," he said quietly. He led her out of the sitting room, away from the curious eyes, down a long hallway until they reached a guest room. He opened the door and gestured inside. The room was clean, bright, with fresh sheets on the bed and a small wardrobe in the corner. Amara stood frozen at the door, unable to believe it was meant for her. "Please," Connell said softly, "take a bath. Rest. You and your baby are safe here now." Amara's lips trembled as tears spilled down her cheeks. She hugged Adiz tightly and nodded slowly, whispering, "God bless you, sir." Connell left her in the guest room and went straight to the kitchen. His voice was calm but firm as he spoke to the chef. "There's a woman in the guest room. Make sure she eats well. Don't delay." "Yes, sir," the chef replied quickly. Later that evening, after the guests had left and the mansion had grown quiet, Connell returned to the sitting room. Tund was there, waiting. Moments later, Amara entered, looking transformed. She had bathed, her hair neatly tied back, and she wore a simple but clean dress given to her by one of the maids. Adiz slept peacefully in her arms. Connell looked at her carefully. "You said you lost the card I gave you?" Amara nodded, her voice breaking. "Yes, sir. I searched everywhere. I even went back to the restaurant, but it was gone. I wanted to call you, but I didn't have a phone." Connell's eyes softened. He believed her. Tund, who had listened quietly, felt a tug in his heart as he watched the young mother. Connell leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "I cannot change what has already happened in your life, Amara, but I can help your future. From now on, you and your baby will not suffer like this again." Amara's tears flowed freely, but this time they were not only from pain. They were tears of relief. She whispered through trembling lips, "Thank you, sir. Thank you." For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. The next morning, Amara woke up in the soft bed of the guest room. For the first time in years, she had slept without fear. Adiz stirred beside her, her tiny face calm, her breathing steady. Amara smiled through her tears as she touched her daughter's cheek. Soon, a maid knocked softly and brought in breakfast, steaming rice, stew, and a cup of warm milk. Amara could hardly believe it was for her. She whispered prayers as she ate slowly, feeding Adiz first before tasting a spoonful herself. Later that day, Kunal came to the room. "Get ready," he said gently. "We are going out." Amara looked at him in surprise. "Out? Where, sir?" "You'll see," he replied with a faint smile. They drove into the city, and soon Kunal stopped at a large clothing shop. He led Amara inside and said, "Pick anything you like for you and your baby." Her eyes widened. "Sir, what do you mean?" "I mean it," Kunal said firmly. "You both deserve better." At first, Amara was shy. She touched a dress and dropped it again. She looked at baby clothes and pulled her hand away. But Kunal encouraged her. "Don't be afraid. Choose." Slowly, she picked a few dresses for herself and some tiny outfits for Adiz. The cashier packed them neatly, and Kunal paid without hesitation. But he wasn't done. Next, he took her to a phone shop. He asked for a strong but easy-to-use phone and placed it in her hands. Then, at a telecom office, he helped her retrieve her old number. Amara held the phone close, her tears flowing freely. "God bless you, sir. I don't even know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Kunal replied gently. For the first time in a long while, Amara felt like a human being again. Not a beggar, not a stranger in the streets, but a woman with dignity. That evening, Kunal and Amara returned to the mansion. Tund was waiting in the living room, his face calm but thoughtful. He stood up as they entered. "Brother," Tund said, turning to Kunal, "there's somewhere I want you to go with me, and I'd like Amara to come too." Amara's heart skipped. She glanced nervously at Kunal, who gave her a small nod. Together, they left the house and drove across town until they stopped in front of a tall apartment building. "Where are we?" Kunal asked curiously. "Follow me," Tund said quietly. They climbed the stairs and stopped at the door of a neatly painted apartment. Tund turned to Amara. His voice grew soft. "When I heard your story, it reminded me of our mother. She raised us alone. She worked day and night, cried many nights, but she never gave up. Sadly, she passed before we could show her the life she deserved." Amara's eyes filled with tears. Her hands trembled as she held Adiz closer. Tund reached into his pocket and pulled out a small key. He pressed it gently into Amara's palm. "This apartment, it's yours." Amara gasped. Her knees buckled, and she fell to the ground, crying loudly. "Oh God, what did I do to deserve this kindness?" Kunal stood speechless, looking at his brother in awe. "Tund, this is more than I expected." Tund placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. "We'll also open a supermarket for you. Don't worry, we'll get a good manager to guide you, but you will learn and grow. With time, you'll run it yourself." Amara wept uncontrollably, her tears falling on Adiz's tiny clothes. For the first time, she wasn't crying from pain. She was crying from overwhelming joy. Weeks passed, and Amara's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. The supermarket opened under her name, stocked with goods neatly arranged on the shelves. Customers came in daily, and though she was still learning, the hired manager guided her patiently. For the first time, Amara felt a sense of purpose beyond survival. One afternoon, as she arranged small packs of milk on a shelf, her new phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Nervously, she answered. "Hello." A soft voice replied, "Is this Amara?" "Yes," she said carefully. "This is Ifyinanya, Chike's cousin." Amara froze. Her hand tightened around the phone. "Chike?" she whispered, her heart racing. "Yes," the woman continued gently. "I heard about you and the baby. I need to tell you the truth." Amara's legs grew weak. She sat down quickly, holding Adiz close. Ifyinanya continued, "Chike never abandoned you. On the very day he left Lagos to see his family, he was in a terrible accident. He was in a coma for months, and he didn't survive. He passed away quietly." Amara's tears spilled instantly. No. All this time I thought he left me. I thought he turned his back on us." Ifyinanya's voice shook with emotion. "He never stopped loving you. He told his mother about you before he left. She is alive, and she doesn't know she has a granddaughter. Please bring Adiz one day. She deserves to meet her." Amara pressed the phone to her chest as she sobbed. For months, she had carried the pain of abandonment, but now the truth set her free. Her tears were no longer of bitterness. but of sorrow mixed with peace. She finally understood. Chike had not chosen to leave her. Fate had taken him. She looked down at Adiz, who smiled innocently in her arms, and whispered, "Your father loved us, and you will meet your grandmother." That evening, Kunnel and Tund came to visit the supermarket. They found Amara standing at the counter, her face tired but peaceful, Adiz sleeping beside her. Kunnel stepped closer. "You look different today," he said gently. Amara nodded, her eyes glistening. "I finally know the truth. Chike didn't abandon me. He died. His cousin called me today." Kunnel and Tund exchanged a glance, their hearts heavy. Kunnel placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Then let his memory give you strength, not pain." Amara smiled faintly through her tears. "Thank you. You gave me hope when I had none." Tund added warmly, "Your story is only beginning. Raise your daughter well, grow this business, and walk proudly. You survived the streets, Amara. Now you will thrive." Amara's heart swelled. She looked at the two brothers before her and at her sleeping child. She had gone from cold nights on the bare floor to the warmth of safe home, from hunger and rejection to food, shelter, and dignity. She kissed Adiz's forehead and whispered softly, "Your life will be different, my child. You will grow up strong, surrounded by love." As the sun set, its golden rays shone through the glass windows of the shop, bathing the room in warm light. Amara lifted her eyes, her spirit filled with gratitude. Her story was no longer one of endless suffering. It had become a story of hope, of kindness, and of the promise of a brighter tomorrow. And so, the woman once forgotten by the world finally found her place in it. Not as a beggar, not as a victim, but as a mother who kept her promise and rose again. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more touching stories that will inspire and move your heart.